Welcome to A1R Psychic Radio here on Moonstruck TV with Amanda Hall Psychic all the way from the Gold Coast. I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic week wherever you are in this planet of ours. And look, I know there's always weather events going on somewhere and we all complain it's either too cold, too hot, too wet, too this, too that. But sometimes I think we just need to breathe and be pleased that we're alive and we're safe and we're well and that life is sort of marching on whether we want it to or not. But, you know, we do live in an amazing place. Wherever your location is, it's amazing. You know, for me here on the Gold Coast, surrounded by beautiful beaches and the beautiful hinterland and just, you know, perfect one day and absolutely perfect the next, I mean, I can't complain. But no matter where you are in this amazing planet of ours, your world will be perfect too. So this week we're going to go to the Simply Tarot card of the week, which is the Four of Cups. Now, this is a rather ambiguous sort of card because it is the card of money fluctuations. Usually it means the secondary meaning, which is being offered something that you may or may not want. And that's what you can see there is the man sitting under the tree. He's being offered something. He's got his arms folded and he's looking at the three cups on the ground in front of him and he's being offered the fourth one. He's saying, look, I'm not sure whether I really want this. Now, this can apply to any area of your life. It doesn't always have to be concerning money. Sometimes it is, and most of the issues that we have in our lives revolve around money in some sort of fashion or emotions or a combination of both. So it can be being offered something that you may or may not want. So be aware of that. Be aware that you don't always have to be quite as closed off as what he is sitting under the tree contemplating his future, that sometimes we need to just open our heart up and listen to what's being said before we sort of outrightly say no. Sometimes by a little bit of reflection and giving it a little bit more thought, we can actually see that the offer that's being made may be something that mightn't have been quite what we were expecting or what we wanted, but look, it's workable. So I think this is a card of asking you to be flexible. Don't just dismiss something because you don't understand it or that's going to be your first automatic reply. Open your mind, open your heart, and give it a little bit of thought before you reject what's actually being offered. And it's interesting because a lot of people are changing jobs at the moment, I've found in the last week with my clients from around the world. I've been dealing with a lot of people that have got a little bit of itchy feet, as we call it here in Australia, and looking for new jobs. So that may be something that brings that card into being. Now, this week astrologically, every week I say we have a big week, and we do seem to have some very big weeks astrologically. The sun's still in Leo, so it's that time of the year where we should all get out there and strut our stuff and be proud to be alive and really not necessarily become bossy or shove our version of truth down someone else's throat, but it is the time when you can stand up and be proud to be counted and say, I'm who I am and I like who I am and I'm proud of who I've become. You don't necessarily have to like me, but I'm happy with me, and that's the important thing. And I think if we all start to become happy with ourselves, the world would suddenly become a happier place instead of people coveting and wanting to be somebody that they're not. Be comfortable in your own skin. That's what I see the Leo time of the year, of being proud of who you are and what you've achieved and what you've accomplished. We're not all going to go on to be the president of the USA, and we're not all going to be street sweepers. We're going to be somewhere in between those two margins and be proud of who you are and what you've achieved in your life. So the sun's in Leo now for about another week. So let's enjoy it while the sun's there and enjoy sort of getting out there and strutting our stuff and showing the world how proud we are of ourselves and everybody around us. We have Mercury, the planet of communication, is sitting at the moment in Leo. It's not sitting in Leo, I beg your pardon, it's sitting in Virgo. Mercury, the planet of communication, is sitting in Virgo and it is actually conjunct Mars. Now, what this means in layman's terms, Mercury is the planet of communication, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. Mars is the planet of action. It's the planet that makes us get out of bed of a morning and decide to do something. It gives us that kick up the backside that we might need. So when we've got Mercury here conjuncting Mars, it's asking us to be extremely careful of any communication that we might be entering into at the moment, because we could sometimes be a little bit aggressive or be a little bit over the top in what we're expecting. Now, anytime we've got something sitting in the Virgo energy, and Mercury feels very comfortable in Virgo, it's very articulate, it's very matter of fact. The facts are the facts. There's no prettying it up or smooching over the top of it or sort of making it colourful. This is the cold, hard facts. It's black and white. It's there in black and white. You can't mistake it. You can't avoid it. You can't ignore looking at it. You need to really sort of understand what is being presented to you, particularly if it's in some form of communication, whether it be written, whether it's in a text message, an email, whether it's in a written document. You know, many times we tend to think of communication only being something that we verbally do, but communication comes in many forms, and particularly this day and age with all our electronic devices, we have many different ways of communicating. So make sure that your communication is very clear. It's to the point. There's no mistaking what's being said. Don't flower over the truth. Call it as it is. Make it very black or white. There shouldn't be many shades of grey in anything at the moment. It should be very clear and very easy to read and understand, so that then people can't turn around and say, I didn't understand what you meant by that. If it's written in plain, simple, easy to understand language, then we all should be able to understand it. So that's a very clear message for each and every one of the 12 signs this week. It's not just for Virgos, and it's not just for Capricorns and Tauruses and Pisces. It's for the 12 signs. Now, I want to be very clear on that, because most of us will be entering into some form of negotiations or communication in this coming 7 days, where we need to be very clear, very articulate, and we need to make sure that we've kept it in a, not a dumbed down fashion, but in a fashion that is easily absorbed by the person that we're trying to have the conversation with or we are communicating with. We need to speak at their level or communicate at their level. We have Jupiter, the planet of opportunity and expansion and luck, is sitting in Taurus at the moment. Now, Jupiter is conjunct or holding hands the moon. The moon is conjunct or holding hands Uranus. Now, this is a really interesting configuration this week of transits, when we've got Jupiter leading the charge, which I said is the planet of opportunity and expansion and bringing some, great joy in our lives. Now, Jupiter can also mean expanding waistlines. So just be a little bit careful here with it sitting in Taurus, because Taurus is known to have a sweet tooth. So we need to be very careful that we're not going to just expand our waistlines just because we can, or that we think, oh, just have another piece of that chocolate cake. It was so nice. Maybe one might be just the suggested course of action there, to stop at one and sort of say, well, I really enjoyed that, and savor every moment of it. So Jupiter here conjunct the moon, which is only going to be for the next 48 hours, means that there's some emotional issues here that might be sort of seemingly jumping off the page. It's almost as if Jupiter is exaggerating or amplifying our emotions at the moment, and our emotions might be a little bit tricky here, because we've got conjunct Uranus as well. Now, Uranus is like the Tower card in the tarot deck. It's the unusual, the unexpected. It can happen out of nowhere. Uranus delights in coming in and shaking things up and tipping things upside down and saying, well, you did say you wanted change. You didn't say, you weren't real clear on what sort of change you wanted. You just said you wanted change, so I created havoc and chaos. I thought that was the sort of change you were looking for. You said you were bored. So be very careful what you verbalise. Now, you also have to be very careful here that the changes that might be coming in your life that are due to emotional issues can sometimes be very fiery and outspoken. So we need to be very careful at how we conduct ourselves. If we are emotional about an issue, maybe sort of tone down our emotions, look at finding ways to come in on a more passive angle. Don't come in like the bull in the china shop, raging and roaring and ranting and raving and knocking everything flying on your way through. Make sure that you come in a more gentle approach. There's an age-old saying, you catch more flies with honey than you do vinegar. And the same is to be said here for communication. You will catch more information and you will help more people and get better answers if you sort of come in on a more gentle approach. Now, I know we've already spoken about Mercury, but I also want to smirk about Mercury again, because Mercury in Virgo is actually sitting opposition, which means it sits at opposite ends of the zodiac at the moment, of Saturn, the planet of discipline. Now, Mercury is in Virgo, so this is going to really affect Virgos, Capricorns and Tauruses, the opposite sign being Pisces. Now, when we talk about an opposition, it's at opposite ends of the zodiac. So we have Saturn, the planet of discipline, restriction, and stickability in the chart, is sitting in Pisces. So this is going to be affecting Pisces, Cancers, and Scorpios, and the opposite sign of Virgo. So what it's asking for here is the communication is going to be tricky. It's going to be difficult because you've got Mercury on one hand wanting to be very articulate, very direct, very definite, very sort of this is how it is. Then it's opposing Saturn. Now, Saturn's not opposing the fact of you being articulate and being straightforward and direct, but what he's sort of saying, have you looked at everything squarely? Have you really done your due diligence? You know, you're coming in here and you're picking a fight with me, or you're coming in here being bombastic and laying the law down with what you think is the truth. Have you done your homework? Have you done your research? Have you really read the article or the document or the letter that has been sent to you? Or are you just getting on your high horse and coming in here and sort of ranting and raving and carrying on and not really fully understanding what's being said? So be very, very careful in this next 7 days of communication, particularly for those signs that I've mentioned. But this also flows onto the remaining signs of the zodiac as well. We need to make sure for very, very clearly, if we need to have a conversation that's of great importance, whether it's written or verbal, that we all have facts. We have it very carefully documented in front of us, that we can refer to it if it's very important. We need to make sure that we keep our emotions in check, and we do it in a very articulate, professional sort of manner. It's not the time to lose your temper or get cranky with somebody because they don't understand. If they don't understand, say to them, well, please share with me the part that you don't understand. Let me clarify it for you. Let me put it in another way, so that then we can actually sort of get some breakthroughs here in any form of communication. Some people may be dealing with official situations, whether they be government or legal. This will be the time to make sure that you really fully understand anything before you sign it, before you enter into any agreements, before you draw up any important documents, sign contracts, those sort of things. Make sure that everything is correct. If you happen to be purchasing something that's going to cost a lot of money, and anything over $500 is a lot of money in my book, make sure that you read the fine print. Make sure that all the facts and figures on the contract or the agreement are in their correct place. This is the time when mistakes can be made. I always have a rule: when I'm going to sign something or I'm going to deal with something, I like to read it out aloud. I find that way that you pick up mistakes that you wouldn't if you're just scanning over it, you're just reading it with your eyes, where if you read it out aloud, all of a sudden you realise there's an extra zero there, or the calculation is wrong, or something is wrong, or the words are wrong. So that might be a good little plan to sort of put in your back pocket, particularly if you're signing anything this week. So we have Pluto, the planet of discovery and transformation, is in the last degree of Capricorn. He will be there till the early part of 2024. Pluto's had a very, very long reign here, well over 20 years, while he's been trying to transform the planet and the world on the last little bit now. So, you know, this is why we're seeing so many things coming out into the woodwork, so many governments and things like that now using words like transparent and trying to sort of make some, you know, some changes to climate change and trying to, you know, get the world into a better place, hopefully. But we can all play a part in this. We can all do our little bit, you know, whether you believe in climate change or not. You know, we all do need to take some responsibility for the mess that we create and the amount of plastics that we use, and, you know, whether we can do a little bit of recycling, or, you know, say, no, I don't want packaging to begin with. You know, if we send a strong enough message to the manufacturers, they'll stop using packaging if we say we don't want it. So, you know, there's plenty of little things we can do as mere humans. So we're going to talk with Trish in Hull in the UK. Are you there, Trish?
I am, yeah.
Do you have a question I can answer for you, please, Trish?
Hey, just a general, really. If you could, please.
Okay, it's easier for me, Trish, if you've got a question, because we only have such a limited amount of time here on the show to answer, you know, the things that might be concerning you. So, you know, are you looking for guidance on love or a new job or move house, or there must be something that the reasons you phoned into the show?
A bit of guidance, please.
Can you repeat that for me, sweetie?
A bit of guidance, please.
Okay. All right. Look, at the moment, I feel that there's been, it's sort of almost like somebody sitting on top of you at the moment, Trish. It's sort of like you feel as if everything's very restricted. Nothing's sort of moving forward the way that you would like them to move at the moment. But I do feel that change is around the corner. by the end of the month, you're going to start to feel as if everything's starting to ease up. You're starting to feel as if you've got more confidence in yourself, as if you're able to sort of start moving forward. Things that have been sort of holding you back or restricting you are coming to a close. Things are starting to sort of open up a lot more. They were showing me some changes around where you're living, Trish, and I didn't exactly want to say that as being a move of residence, but it's like you're moving things around or you're making changes in your life, which is going to bring things more to where you need them to be by the end of this year. It's sort of like you just even moving the couch is going to make a difference. It's sort of, even if you only moved it to Hoover behind it, it's like I've shifted the energy in some ways. It's like almost everything feels very stuck around you at the moment, Trish, and it's like I want to move everything, even if it's only move it out and move it back again, to just sort of break that momentum, to shift that sort of energy around you. It's interesting because they're also sharing with me that you are really quite psychic in your own right. And I think that you sort of tend to sort of think, oh, that was just a lucky guess, or well, that was good that I thought about that and it did happen, but you're not really giving yourself the credit for the fact that you are starting to tune into your higher self, that you are starting to listen to yourself more. And I want to start to see this become more of a reality with you, Trish, over the coming months, because if your first thought about something is usually the right one, then let's go with it. You know, we don't always have to understand why we've been given some information or why we've got a gut feeling about something, but we just need to acknowledge it and maybe write it down and refer back to it at a later stage and know that we were right, that it wasn't anything that we sort of dreamed up. It was something that was there, that was being shared with us, and it will become automatic. It'll become like, you know, your morning routine of getting up, washing your face, brushing your teeth and combing your hair. It will just become that automatic. They're also sort of sharing with me that this year has been a real sort out year, Trish. It's like I've gone through everything in my life, you know, whether it be friends, family, clothing, whatever, and I've sort of discarded the things that are no longer suit the new Trish that I'm becoming. And it doesn't necessarily mean we've got to remove people from our lives. It may be that some people that were important in our lives are not so important now, and we're moving on and opening up to the potential of maybe bringing some new people into our lives, or really just focusing more on what Trish needs and not necessarily focusing on what everybody else needs around you. I think you've done your time of rescuing people, Trish. It's now time to rescue Trish. It's now time to put you at the number one position in your life and sort of see what the world's got to offer, because I think 2024 is going to be a year where we're going to gain a lot of rewards, but it's like we've got to slowly and methodically work towards that. And that's why I go back to just moving the furniture, even if it's to move it out, hoover behind it and put it back again. We need to move the energy, particularly in where you're living. It's almost like it's stale. And it's like I want to, here in Australia, we'd say we'd, you know, do a good clearing with some smoke or some incense or some sage and then open the windows up and let the fresh air in. It may not be appropriate for you to do that in your part of England at the moment. It might be too cold. But that's sort of literally what I want to do. I want to sort of get some freshness in there. I want to get some clear out the stale and bring in the freshness. So I hope that's helped you, Trish, in England. We're going to talk now with Barbara in Albany in New York in the USA. Are you there, Barbara?
Hi, Amanda. Yes, I'm here.
Do you have a question I can work with for you, please, Barbara?
I was wondering if you have a message from my guides.
Okay. Guides can be many different things. They mean many different things to many different people, Barbara. And my personal belief is that our spirit guides are usually people that we were connected to in this lifetime, or people that have a vested interest in guiding us and helping us and not telling us what to do, but sort of putting suggestions into our mind that we then have the right to say, yes, I'm going to act on that. I know I won't. So it's really interesting because we all work with our guides every single day, even though we may not acknowledge it or even know it or even sort of feel it, we are actually getting downloads of messages all the time. So when people ask me, have I got a message from my guides, it's really interesting because I want to say, well, you get them constantly. You know, there's no one particular message or one particular guide's going to jump in and say, look, Barbara, I want you to do this or that or the other. They're constantly sharing things with you. That's where our a lot of our thought patterns come from, our ideas come from, is coming directly from our guides, whoever we believe in. And everybody has a different interpretation of what their guides are. Some people believe it's a religious guide, and that's fine. There's no right or wrong with anything. What they are sharing with me, Barbara, is it's what, like, I want to fling the doors open. It's like I'm ready to sort of take on the world again. So if I'm taking from that maybe you had a little bit of time there where you closed yourself off to new opportunities, or sort of needed to feel as if you needed some downtime to yourself. Did that happen earlier this year?
Yes, it has. Yes, and I feel like now is the time I should be stepping out. Yes.
Yeah, and it's good. It's like I want to get the doors and fling them wide open and sort of say, I'm here, world, I'm ready. I'm ready for, whatever the new adventure is, and that's good. But I do think it was important that you did have that time where you not necessarily hibernated, but where you sort of brought everything back to a central point and you removed anything that was no longer necessary to you. And you started to sort of look at, well, okay, what do I really want to bring in? What changes do I want to bring into my life? What can I work on? What can I achieve easily? All those sort of questions were the things that went through your mind. And you started to slowly, work through the processes, and that's good. It's interesting because they're showing me a new job, and yet I didn't feel that was necessarily the next thing on the list of things to do.
Yes, it is true that I'm starting like a new job, a new venture, and I have a good feeling about it. Yes.
Oh, that's good, because I feel very positive about it. I feel really excited about it for you.
Excellent. Thank you.
And I think it's something that you're going to grow into. It's sort of, yes, it's going to be overwhelming at the beginning, but once you sort of settle into it, it's like you can see so much potential there that there's a couple of different angles that you could go as far as promotion in time. So this is why I think it's so exciting. It's not just going into a job and sort of saying, well, okay, I've got to stay on this one career path. There'll be a couple of other opportunities that will come up in the next 2 years that you could see you could slightly deviate, and that could even be better too. So has there been some changes around where you're living in the last few months as well?
Um, well, no, but yes, my husband and I are thinking about moving to Tennessee, buying a piece of land. So we've been talking about that and trying to make the time to look at listings and lands and things like that. So we are future planning here.
Yeah, well, that's good though, because you're sort of starting to look at what your needs are going to be in the future, aren't you? So do you plan long-term wise to move to Tennessee, or is this just something nice to have?
It would be a long-term down the road. And again, it's something that we're looking to buy a piece of land when we move, and maybe sooner than later. We don't know at this time, but we are planning on eventually moving.
Yeah, I didn't feel the move was just yet. I'm not saying you won't purchase something, but I just didn't feel the move to there was just yet. It was sort of, to me, a longer range plan. It was something that, yes, we'll get the land and then we're going to work out what we're going to do, whether we're going to build on it or what we're going to do. And, to me, it was like a 10-year plan. It wasn't something that we were buying and moving immediately. This was sort of something that we were going to work towards, and you'll probably change your plans 50 times between now and what you eventually end up with, but that's okay. That's good, because I think it's giving you and your husband something to focus on together as a couple. And I'm not saying the marriage was in trouble, but what I'm saying is you were so busy doing your stuff over here and he was so busy over here doing his stuff, and there was nothing in between together. And this is sort of like bringing you back together again. And I really feel that that's important. He's such a sweetie, but look, I think sometimes I don't think he speaks his mind enough. He sort of, if you said the sky was blue, he'd say, yes, darling, and he wouldn't disagree with you. Even if he saw a bit of pink in there, he'd say, oh, yes, darling, it's definitely blue. But I want to see him sort of get a bit more of a voice. And I'm not saying to oppose everything that you're saying, but I'd just like to see him have a little bit more input, and particularly with this land, because to me, he's going to be the one leading the charge with this. It's like you going along with him, not the other way around this time. Okay. And I feel that this is important. It's important for him. I don't know whether you believe in past lives or not, but I feel in a past life, your husband has actually lived in Tennessee before, and it's like a calling to come home. He'll be guided to where it is that you need to buy the land and what you're going to do. It's sort of like a past life thing that he's got to finish off, if I can put it that way. It's sort of like,
Okay.
people sort of talk about, being called home. You mightn't have been born there, but there's a place you go to and you walk on the ground and you feel, gee, this feels like home, and I've never been here before. It'll be that sort of feeling, and it'll be those sort of comments that he'll be making. And you sort of think to yourself, well, we haven't been here before. I don't know why that's coming into his head, but it's really important, because I don't know that he is what I'd term a spiritual sort of man. If you said to him, you get hunches, he'd look at you a bit strange, you know what I mean? Like, we don't talk about those sort of things. It's not something I can prove scientifically, so we dismiss that. So it's going to be unusual for him to sort of walk on a piece of ground and say, gee, I feel like I'm home. Be scratching it. Something wrong with him today. He doesn't usually use that terminology, but you've got a bit of a heads up now that he'll be the one leading the charge. And look, I think it's a good move when you do eventually move. But, for the next 8 to 10 years, you've got a busy life where you are and, making money and having fun and, getting on with life, and it's good. But, eventually this to me will be more than a home in Tennessee. There's going to be a business attached to it. I don't know whether that was the plan at the moment.
Yes. And so I should pretty much let him kind of take the lead with where we're picking the land and kind of just let him go with it, right?
Yeah, let him go with it. I mean, if you object to it, by all means speak up. But what I'm saying is I think you're going to be so impressed that how he's sort of finding his own path in life, his own passion, his own strength. You know what I mean? You haven't seen him this excited about something for a very, very long time. And it's like, well, I'm happy to stand back and let you do that, darling. That's fine.
Okay, cool.
Like,
great.
It's nice to see.
No, that's excellent. Yeah, because at first it was a little overwhelming but yeah, I'll let him we're having fun with it, but I'll let him kind of lead the way, and that's absolutely fine with me.
That's wonderful, Barbara. Well, that's where we've got to leave it. We've come to the end of the show. The show goes very quickly each week, I know, and, we get to talk to some amazing people around the world. And each week I like to leave you with a song. And I've mentioned many times on the show, I never know what sort of song I'm going to leave you with. Sometimes it might be something that's been going through my head for the last week, and sometimes it'll be just something instantly as I'm writing up the astrology report, putting my symbols on my board so that I can talk about it on the show. The song will come to me, and it doesn't always necessarily have to relate to something astrologically or something that's going on in the world. Sometimes it's just a song pops into my head and I think, well, that'll be a great song. And this week's one of those sort of songs. It was sort of like I had no idea what I was going to talk about or mention about, as the song at the end of the show. And then this song popped into my head, which is a very, very old song. And a lot of people won't even know it. They'll know the singer, but they may not know the song. And it's off the Inner Vision album of Stevie Wonder's, and it's called Higher Ground. It's one of my favourite albums of all time. I absolutely adore Stevie Wonder. I think he has an amazing message to share with us no matter what he sings. And I've been a huge fan of his for a very, very, very long time, since I was a little girl. So I want to leave you with that song this week. It's called Higher Ground and it's off the Inner Visions album. So until next week, bye for now.